Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of So What Else? I'm your host, Caitlin Elliott, and I'm really excited to bring you this interview today with Allison Byxbe. I really enjoyed my chat with her. You're really going to like her. She's just very down to earth and really relatable. And she's been through a lot. She's been through a lot in her life, a lot of heartache, a lot of challenge, just a lot of stuff. And in this interview, we talk about her story and we talk about her journey to healing. Her book was sent to me and it's called Journaling as a Spiritual Practice, Tracing the Lines of Grace to God's Presence. And when I initially saw it, I told her this in the interview. I was like, oh, I don't think I'm the target audience for this. Like, I don't journal. I don't want to journal. I like to talk. I'm a verbal processor. Like, I'm not looking to take on a new habit here. We're good. But I felt a tug to look into it, and I'm really glad that I did. I feel totally differently after reading her book and having this interview with her. I really feel differently. She makes a lot of really compelling arguments for why journaling can be a massive tool to help process things, to heal, to help connect you to God. There's just a lot. There's a lot in here. I feel like I'm going to be mulling this one over for a long time, to be honest. I really appreciated everything that she said. I know that you will too. If you've ever been through anything hard in your life at all, I suggest you listen. It's a really good interview, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
So it's interesting. We get a lot of people moving to South Carolina from New York and New Jersey because the cost of living is so much less expensive here compared to there. Yeah.
Yes. No, it's funny. My sister literally sent me a house listing like the other day, like of like something in like Charlotte, North Carolina. And she was like, if you go, I'll go. Like, because like people in Jersey, like literally every year, people are like, why are we paying this much money to live here? Like, why don't we move? But then everyone's always like, but I don't want to move by myself. Like, let's all go together. And then, everyone's husband is like, do you know that I have a job? You know what I mean? And we're like, yeah.
There's a family in our church, literally the entire extended family moved down here. So it was like husband and wife and their kids, and then both of their parents' sets moved down, and then brothers and sisters, and like the whole extended family is here now. And they used to be in New York.
Okay, that is literally my dream. We talk about that all the time, where I'm like, we should buy a massive amount of land.
Yeah.
And we all, like my family, Scott, your family, then like my sister, and then her in-laws, like everyone just builds houses on this land. We're all here. Like, it would be so much better. And I'm like, come on, guys, like we can do it. Like, it really, that's like my dream. Like, it sounds so nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, I'm really excited to talk to you today. I mean, your story is obviously very compelling. And I think that I really prefer to speak to people on the podcast who have really been through stuff, because it puts so much more weight behind your words. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm so much more inspired to listen to you about your journey to healing when I know you've really come from some dark places, so I have a lot of respect for you and your journey and the work that you do, and I really enjoyed reading your book. So I wanted to kind of start by talking about your story, and then we can kind of get into all the journaling and stuff like that. But like I said, your story is very compelling. I know that we could start at the beginning. The beginning is not your birth. We don't have that much time, but like, I feel like
I was on a podcast recently, and that's where we started. She wanted to go from birth all the way.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, this is different. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm sure your childhood is very interesting. For the purposes of here today, we could start around when your sister went through what she went through. And then I just kind of want to talk through your story, and then we'll kind of get into all the content. All right.
Okay. Sounds good.
Let's do it.
So I have to say, growing up, my sister and I, we fought a lot, actually. We weren't super close. I was the bratty, tag-along little sister.
I bet.
But then as we became adults and started leading our own independent lives, God was really gracious to allow us to become really close. She's one of my best friends now. And so at the time, I was in my late 20s, we were really close. She had experienced some infertility as a newlywed. And so, of course, our family was praying for her and praying for her and her husband that they could have a baby. And my sister did already have two other children from her teenage years, but
Okay.
she was newly married to this person, her husband Eric, and of course, I think it's kind of a natural thing. Let's have babies, and we thought, well, she's already got a couple, so this is kind of a given thing.
Yeah.
It's a done deal. But she didn't get pregnant, and she didn't get pregnant, and she didn't get pregnant. And then a couple years into that journey, she did, and we were all just ecstatic. I mean, we thought, oh my goodness, God has answered our prayers. This is so exciting. Babies are such good news, right? We
Of
all love
course.
babies. And then when she was 36 weeks pregnant, she went into her doctor's appointment and they couldn't find a heartbeat. And the baby, her name was Zoe, ended up being stillborn. And that was for me kind of the first time I feel like my faith was really tested in terms of, did I really believe all the things that I'd said I'd believed about God, that he was good, that he was trustworthy, that he was going to do good things in our lives? Because it's easy to say and believe those things when life is going along really nicely and kind of as expected. And then that happened, and it just felt like the rug had been pulled out from underneath us. And my faith took a bit of a nosedive in that season, because I could not make sense out of why God had seemingly answered prayers for our family to then for that tragedy to happen. And it was really intense and difficult watching my sister shoulder that grief.
It almost feels worse. The fact that she was going through infertility for so long, and then the fact that she was able to get pregnant and carry the pregnancy almost all the way there. Like, if she had gone into labor at 36 weeks, the baby would have been fine with technology today and NICUs and stuff like that. And so it feels offensive sometimes. Like, you're just like, God, like, why? What was with the teasing? Like, it kind of feels like you gave it and then you took it away. And like, what would be the point of that? Like, it would have been easier to just never be able to get pregnant. Like, that would have just been easier. And like, I think that if an experience like that doesn't cause you to question some things about your faith, then like, maybe you're not being honest and you're not like being self-reflective. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it just, for me, who had what I felt was a very vibrant relationship with the Lord, and I felt very connected emotionally to God. It's like that just got severed in that moment, because I'm like, if this is, maybe God didn't cause this, but he sure as heck didn't intervene. And I'm not sure what I think about a God who behaves in that way. And so things went really quiet and really dark for me. And I felt very, very cut off from God in that season. And it was a hard season, of course, for my sister and her husband, and watching them try to process and navigate that. It just, for our whole family, it was a really, really difficult time.
Okay. And then how long later did you then have your first baby?
Yep. So let me think. I always got to do math. 3 years later. So Zoe was stillborn in 2007. And then I had my first baby, our son, in 2010.
Okay. So you had your son and everything, was typical pregnancy, typical birth. When did you start to have questions about things that were going on with him?
Yeah. So when he was about 4 or 5 months old, and still not meeting some of those developmental milestones, like not rolling over, having a really hard time with tummy time, because that was the big thing. Like, you got to make sure they do their tummy time, not picking up his head. He was having a really hard time gaining weight, which in and of itself, that probably wasn't as big of a thing, because some babies just, with feeding can be a challenge, and it was with him. But these other things, these missed milestones, started to raise some questions. And I'm a first-time mom. So to me, this is, I don't know that it's normal, but I don't know any different. And so I'm really at this point not super concerned. It's just, well, he's struggling a little bit, but we'll get this figured out. So we started physical therapy when he was 4 or 5 months old, just to try and see if we could kind of give him that nudge to help. And, it helped, but it was painfully slow. And so we're kind of trudging along, going through the physical therapy, seeing some progress, not a ton. And so by the time he was about 9 months old, our pediatrician said, "Hey guys, I want to do some genetic testing, but it's really just due diligence. I don't think we're going to find anything, but we got to start maybe exploring things that might be going on to see if we can get some answers because he's still kind of lagging behind. At 9 months old, a lot of babies are crawling at that point. He was not crawling. He couldn't, if you sat him up, he could sit up, but he couldn't sit himself up.
Sure. Yeah.
So just things were just not coming along as they needed to. So we did the testing. And that was in early summer. And then in late summer, my husband and I moved from South Carolina to Pennsylvania because he took a job as a young adult pastor up there. And so it was just before Reed's first birthday. And we had been in Pennsylvania for about 3 weeks. The boxes are not even unpacked. And we get a call from the pediatrician. My husband answered it. I can just viscerally experience that moment in my mind. And he picks up the phone. He wasn't on the phone with her long, but he is scribbling furiously. And so I know who it is. And I'm thinking, okay, this is not just oh, yep, we were right. There's nothing on the results. And he gets off the phone and he tells me this really weird string of numbers and letters. He's like, so Reed has 49 tetra XY. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? What are you even talking about?
Yeah.
And what does it mean? And the pediatrician had told me, she said, do not go Google this syndrome. It's a rare genetic disorder. There's not a lot of good information out there. So please don't go Google it. I'm going to connect you with a genetic counselor who can talk with you a little bit more. She's like, because honestly, it's so rare. I don't have much information.
She probably didn't even know. Yeah.
No. Most doctors have not met a kiddo with this diagnosis. They may have read about it in a textbook, but most have never even seen one in their practice. And so, but of course, I immediately went to Google and
obviously
immediately started researching and hoping I would find something. But really what I just found was more anxiety because it was, the information that was out there was scary and devastating, what I saw. So that's where we were 3 weeks into a new town, new job, I'm still a new mom. He's not even a year old at this point, and world just absolutely turned upside down. This is only 3 years after we lost Zoe. And so there's still a lot of unprocessed grief about that. But we know life just keeps moving. And so you just keep going forward. And so then this diagnosis on top of that grief, it took me under. And that was the catalyst of about a decade of walking in some profound darkness for me.
Yeah. There were some quotes from your book that were very striking to me. You said, I had played by the rules and now God was breaking them. The God I thought I knew, understood, and trusted had become strange, contradictory, and untrustworthy. And I think that that's deeply honest. And I think that I'm sure strikes a chord with anyone who's ever been through anything, because we're told, I honestly hate it when someone's going through something and people are like, God's got this, God's got it. And you're like, great. But bad things still happen all the time. So God may still allow a very, very bad thing to happen. So that doesn't bring me a ton of comfort. You know what I mean? It's we're supposed to be trusting God. And for what though? Because there could still be outcomes that we don't want.
Yeah. And it's still deeply painful.
Yes.
And then there's the reality of, the very first thing I remember thinking after we got that call was, I'm never going to be an empty nester.
Yeah.
And that is a terrible thing to think when your son's not even a year old. But, the way of things is you have babies, you raise them, they grow up, they spread their wings. Then you and your husband enjoy, empty nest years. And I thought, I will likely end up being a caretaker my whole life. And what kind of life is that?
Yeah.
Is there good in this?
Yes. Yeah. It's scary. Your future became incredibly unknown. Listen, everyone's future is technically unknown, but we all have a sense of control a lot, you know what I mean? Where we feel like, we think this is how things are going to go. But when you receive a diagnosis where the pediatrician is saying, I don't really know very much about this, that's obviously incredibly disorienting and incredibly, I can't imagine, less sense of control. Like you're just like, I have no idea. The doctors don't even know like what this is going to look like for me. So that's really a hard thing to work through. And you said that you ended up really leaning into self-sufficiency, which I can relate to so much. When things feel uncertain for me, when I feel stressed, I lean into like, something I can control, cleaning my house. You know what I mean? Like I think that's a really normal response for a lot of like type A people,
Yeah.
The quote in your book, you said, if God wasn't going to change our circumstances, I would do it myself. My scraped raw soul tried to latch onto any shard of earthly hope I could grasp to make my life normal again. And look, I'm sure the things you were doing in those moments were honorable. Like I'm sure you're like setting up appointments with geneticists and you're getting on medications and you're meeting with you're doing good things, but in that you feel like, okay, like God's obviously not helping me. So like I'm going to help myself.
Yeah, 100%. And you hit the nail on the head. It was both Zoe's death and then this diagnosis. I was like, the realization I have no control over whether bad things happen to me and the people that I love. And I don't want these bad things happening to the people I love because they can really take you under. It's not just, oh, this isn't very fun. This is, people get depressed. Sometimes people get suicidal. People turn to alcohol or drugs. I mean, like these are really difficult things. And my self-sufficiency, yes, was let me make appointments. Let me get the right medications. Let me do all this research, right? But it was because I was trying to get out of the reality I was in. Was I trying to help my son? Of course, absolutely.
Obviously.
But it was also I'm going to find my way out of this reality because I don't want to be in it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then not too long after you got his diagnosis, you experienced another heartbreak.
Yes. So I think it was about 6 or 7 months after his diagnosis, I had a miscarriage. So, I mean, I'd tell people that season just felt like compounding grief, like one thing after the next. And, in the scope of a stillbirth and a genetic disorder, lifelong genetic diagnosis, a miscarriage felt a little bit smaller, but nonetheless a grief because it was the hope and the potential, and also the terror of what if there is another issue? Like, I don't know that I could survive that. I don't know that I could shoulder that. And then, so when I was about 10 weeks along, we discovered that I had miscarried. Yeah.
So things are just piling up. I think you said this in your book, because I can relate to this, where I think you experienced like, after Zoe died, you felt like, okay, like that's our hard thing, and it's kind of like we hit our quota. And so then for your son to get this diagnosis and for you to experience a miscarriage, it's just like, I can relate to that 100%. My brother passed away when he was 28, and I felt so much like, okay, this was our hard thing. This is going to be our cross to bear. This will be the lifelong burden that we carry. So to the point where years later, when my mom was diagnosed with an incurable brain cancer, I felt very convinced, like, she is going to heal from this because like we've been through too much. And like, obviously God wouldn't let us lose 2 people in our immediate family within 1 decade. Like, you know what I mean? Like we're too young for this. Like, you know what I mean? Like neither of these people are old. Like this is not going to happen. So then when she did die 2 to 3 years after her diagnosis, it felt very much like, screw this. Like, there's people that have like nothing going on. Like the worst thing that's ever happened to them is like they got a flat tire. Like, why do we get it all? Like, you know what I mean?
You look around. For me, I looked around and I see literally what felt like everybody in my life having babies who didn't have issues, who weren't struggling, who didn't have diagnoses, who were having 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pregnancies without a hitch. And you're thinking, what did I do wrong?
Correct.
Like how did I get signed up for this club? Because it's not the one I want to be a part of. And clearly there's another option for other people. And that was one of the harder parts of the grief, is just looking around and going, I don't understand. Like, because that's not happening for them. So
Right.
what's why us? I mean, and I think that's a natural question to ask in grief that almost anybody I've talked to comes to, is like, why us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then you did have 2 more children.
Yes.
And what's the age gap with your kids?
So they're all about 2.5 years apart. So
Okay.
little stair steps. Yeah.
So it's boy, girl, boy?
Boy, girl.
Boy, girl. Okay.
Yeah.
How is your third just the absolute princess, I'm sure?
She is the family boss. Like, she runs things. She keeps us all organized. One time on a family vacation, I forgot to pack everybody's toothbrushes. So she now packs everybody's toothbrushes for them.
And I'm sure she never lets you live that down.
No, never, ever, ever.
Oh my gosh. I always say my kids' favorite pastime is like at the end of the day, rounding out like all the things I messed up that day. Like they'll be like, I had a wonderful day, except when mom forgot to pack my water bottle. That was really hard for me. You know what I mean? And I'm like, guys,
oh yeah,
it's great. It's just like so humbling.
Yeah.
So then you guys had moved back to near family in South Carolina. You had your 3 kids, and then your marriage went through a hard time as well.
It did. And sometimes it feels a little self-imposed, right? Like these other things like Zoe's death, Reed's diagnosis, those things totally out of our control. But so my daughter, our youngest, was about 9 months old. We decided we're burned out. We're still in Pennsylvania. We're burned out. We're tired emotionally, physically, all those things. Let's go back, get warm again, because it's really frigid in Pennsylvania. Let's be near family. We had all the hope and all the expectations that this move was just going, honestly, probably naively, this is going to solve all our problems.
Sure.
And so we moved back, and we didn't have a real good game plan. My husband and I both are pretty spontaneous people, and our mentality is, we'll make it work. It'll work out. He's trying to run a business that is floundering. So he starts a second business. So he's gone all the time. I am at home with 3 children under the age of 5 at this point. One with significant special needs. And I am, my professional background, I taught college for about 20 years, but at this point was not teaching. And that was its own kind of grief, because it was something I loved, but now I'm at home.
An identity for you, you know.
Yeah, all the things. Ben's gone all of the time. I'm growing just more and more resentful. And whereas I'm a verbal processor, and you kind of always know what's going on with me and how I'm feeling, my husband's a bit more internal, very steady on the outside, and you don't always know kind of how much chaos there might be on the inside. And so I was kind of oblivious, but about a year, I think, after moving back to Columbia, he confessed to me that he had begun looking at porn. And I mean, it's a really interesting thing. In the scheme of everything that was going on, my response at the time was like, well, that sucks. But of all my problems, that one seems
Oh, for sure.
What am I gonna do? I'm like,
totally.
Hey, right. And in my mind, I remember thinking that's a him problem, and he needs to get that sorted out, which I think was just the grace of God, because I know that can really mess with your mind as a woman when you realize that is going on. And so that's where our marriage was. And so in the midst of all of this, I became deeply and officially depressed. I'd probably been depressed for a number of years, but I'd started to see a counselor, and she just looked across the table at me and she's like, Allison, this is what we call depression. And it's so interesting and funny. Like, I remember being surprised when she said that. I'm like, oh, this must be pretty bad. And I don't know, there's almost a dissociation that can happen, I think, when you're carrying a lot of grief and a lot of chaos. And financially, our family was in a really tough place too, and financial stress is its own kind of beast. So I think I've said this in the book, basically every category of life for us was labeled failure at that point. Like, there was nothing untouched in our lives that didn't feel like it was just broken or dead or in disrepair. And in that season, I started to feel like our lives are just beyond the grace of God at this point. Like, I've made mistakes before. We've had issues before, but this is just too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to feel like I want to get out of bed in the mornings. I certainly don't want to parent. I can't even want these things. Just a large level of apathy, because to care about any of those things would just open up a dam. I was like, I'm not sure I'll survive that emotional tsunami if I open it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember having a similar experience. I went to just like a physical, I think, with my doctor. And you know how like sometimes maybe I must have been not that long after having a baby, because like, you know how they have you fill out that thing that's like,
Oh,
are you
yeah.
depressed, basically?
Yeah.
Like, and it's basically it's like kind of ridiculous, like, because
Right.
it's like, do you cry every day? Like, you know what I mean? You're like, oh my God.
And they have like 30 seconds to decide if you are or not.
Literally. But I remember like filling it out, just like whatever. And then like the doctor came in, we did the physical, and then she like looks at the thing and she was like, so these numbers aren't good. And I was like, oh. Like, and she was like, so just want to talk about that for a second. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but it's like you're in such denial. Like, you're like, does everybody not feel like this? Like, this is not how everyone fills out this paper.
This isn't normal.
Yeah. Yeah. She's like, this isn't great.
Yeah.
Okay. So journaling entered your life at some point as a means for healing. You said in the book, you said, my journey back to wholeness began by acknowledging my pain, and it started with one step, one counseling appointment, one medication, one conversation, one journal entry at a time.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that, because obviously your circumstances did not change. Your son, you know, Zoe was still not going to live. Like, she was gone years ago. Reed's diagnosis was not going to change. You lost a baby via miscarriage. Those things are not going to change. Your financial situation can change. The health of your marriage can change. But those circumstances were what they were.
Yeah.
And so you have a choice, like, to either try to heal through it, or, like you said, to stay in just an apathetic, like, I'm just going to not care about things. But you did step into healing. So talk to us about that. Obviously, I know, like you just said, you went to counseling. I'm sure that was part of it. You know, talk to me a little bit about your healing journey, and then how journaling kind of entered the scene.
Yeah. Well, there's a moment, and I talk about this in the book, where God's call to life or death, and that he gives Moses in the Old Testament, like, and God's people, it resonated very strongly with me, because I had a moment where I could clearly see in my mind that I was staring down a choice. I could either choose apathy, which would lead to spiritual, emotional, possibly physical death, or I could choose life. And it wasn't going to be easy, but thank God that the Holy Spirit nudged me in the direction of life. And when it became that desperate and that dire, and the choice was that clear to me, I'm like, okay, I got to do whatever I got to do, and I got to head down this path. And I mean, even all these years later, 10 plus years later, it's still very emotional for me to think about, because it's very real to me that I could have very easily chosen the other path.
Yeah.
And I don't have any idea where I would be if that had been the choice. And so, just like you read, I said, okay, I'm going to do counseling. Okay, I'm going to whatever. I think if you kind of take a big 30,000-foot view of my life, I've always loved words, writing, reading, all of that kind of stuff. And so journaling has always been something I've done on and off throughout my life. But it was much more kind of a documenting.
Yes.
Here's my day, or I'm going to document this prayer I'm praying. And it was cathartic. But I noticed, as I turned toward journaling in this healing journey and started getting really honest with God, and finally owning, here's how I feel, and I'm really mad, and I'm really devastated, and you could have done something.
Yeah.
Just that gut level honesty that I'd been avoiding all of those years. I finally said, I'm going to get honest about this in my journal. I'm going to write about it, and I'm going to see what happens. And as I began to write those things down and get super honest with God, he began to meet me in those spaces. And he began to show me that, yes, things had been devastating and difficult and impossible, but his grace was still showing up. And he began to show me those small ways that grace had actually been with me the whole time. I couldn't see it because I was so buried. And as I began to look back and as he began to show me those graces along the way, that he had actually been with us the whole time, that he had wept with us through that pain, that is where the healing started. Because I was no longer alone. I realized I had not been alone. I wasn't alone. And that he was shouldering the grief and the pain alongside of me.
Yeah.
And for me, writing about that was incredibly healing. My mind was so overwhelmed and jumbled at the time that to try and just think those things was not happening. But writing slowed me down enough that I could think about and write through one thought, one idea, one prayer, one question, one rant at a time, and allow the Spirit of God to respond to those things as I wrote them down. And we know that neurologically, or what I would learn later neurologically happens is when our brain is required to use multiple regions to get something done, like writing, that promotes integration of our brain, and integration is what our brain needs to heal. So to make sense out of our stories, the different parts of our brain have to work together, and writing is a practice that allows that to happen. I didn't know it at the time. I just knew that it was helping. And then I started to get real curious. I'm like, what is going on here? Because this is almost too good to be true. How can just writing this stuff down in my journal actually be healing me, be a huge part of the healing process? And that's when I started doing the research. And that's when I started learning that that's actually how God's designed our brains neurologically. There's a real reason that it helps.
That's amazing. You said in the book, journaling lowers stress, improves our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health, and can be an effective tool for reducing anxiety and depression. You said, I found that journaling was helping me heal from the destructive nature of self-sufficiency. I began to see that what I really needed wasn't control, but the ability to create meaning and insight from my story, which journaling is so helpful for doing. It's so interesting because, like you just said, I think that some people might be listening to this and think oh, that's nice, but I don't really like to write. I like to talk, or my prayer life is fine. And that's fine. But I think that we would be lying if we ever said that it's so easy to get distracted when you're praying or when you're talking, I find that it's so stupid. Even just 10 minutes before this interview started, I sat down at my computer. I was like, I have 10 minutes. I'm going to pray over this interview. Do you know that 3 minutes into me praying over it, I was like, oh, shoot, I have to blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I sent a text message off because I realized I forgot something. It's so easy to get distracted. Whereas, like you said, if you're writing, okay, even if then something does pop into your head that you're like, okay, so then make a little note of the thing you just remembered, and then you can go back and finish your thought instead of it's like, now it's gone. I don't know what was going on. The physical act of writing helps you finish a thought.
Absolutely. And because writing requires the logic side of our brains, let me give this a name, let me put language to it. It's also the process that says, hey, to your brain, I can store this information in long-term storage memory. And when it goes there, that helps our minds find some resolution. So if you've ever found yourself churning with thought, it's likely because your brain just has not processed it enough to store it effectively. And it's begging you, it's asking you, please help me process this. And writing about it is one way that we do that. And a lot of people think of journaling as this kind of warm, fuzzy hobby, but it is a scientifically proven, research-backed practice that literally rewires our brains and changes them from destructive patterns of thought, whatever your choice, whatever your destructive thought patterns might be, to ones that can bring healing and hope and goodness.
It's amazing. So what does journaling look like for you specifically? If someone's listening to this and they're like, so what do I do? Like I literally just sit down and write like, dear God, like I slept terribly last night. Like what does it like look like for you?
Yeah.
How long do you sit and do it? Do you do it every single day? Does it have to be in the morning? Like tell me about the practicalities of journaling.
Okay, first of all, I'm not a morning person, so no.
Okay,
It does
amazing.
not have to be in the
Love
morning.
to hear it. Love to hear
let
it.
me give you that permission. Second of all, I actually, even as passionate as I am about journaling, I don't journal every day because life is life.
Yes.
And I've got kids and a husband and a job and
Yeah.
all the things to do. And so the beautiful thing about journaling is it will meet you where you are for as long as you have, whether that's 5 minutes or 30 minutes or if you want to go longer, right? We do know the more that you do it with intention, the more benefit you'll reap from it. It's like any practice. It's like going to the gym. It's like healthy eating, right? Like the more you do it, the more benefit you'll gain from it. But even just 5 minutes can be profoundly helpful. And so for me, journaling for me looks like a couple of different things. I do still keep a journal that's like, hey, here's what happened today. And that's my like short form, couple of minutes I jot down. Ainsley lost her third molar today or whatever, because I like tracking those kinds of things. But my more personal journaling where I'm trying to connect with God looks like this question is my favorite. God, where did I see you today? And I just sit with that question because that's the question that started the healing process for me. When I could finally have the vision to see that God was at work, that God was there, that's what changed everything. And so it's still the question I find myself going back to. And it requires listening. And that's probably the biggest difference in my journaling now versus pre-diagnosis of Reid. Is it's not just a dumping of what I'm thinking, it's a writing down and a listening and a waiting.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorites. Also, I tell people, I feel like there are journaling prompts everywhere. So you listen to a song and there's a line that just kind of moves you. Write that line down and write about why it moved you. Like, why did that resonate? Why did that stand out to you? Or you hear a joke that's really funny. Write it down. Write about why it was so funny to you. Because if you can start to pay attention to the things that are speaking to your spirit and using those as journal prompts, you'll never run out of things to write about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. What about someone who's like literally listening to this and thinking, I could never journal because like God forbid someone ever found those journals or you know what I mean? Like practically, what do you say to someone like that?
Yes. So as I say, that is such a smart question to ask because it's a real issue. I have a small locker that has a key that I can lock it with. A lot of my stuff stays in that. A lot of my journals stay in that locker. There are pages in my journal that after I have written them, I have ripped them out and shredded or burned them.
I love that. I love that.
Right? Some people, they like to keep their journals digitally because they can put it behind a password. And that's another way to protect it. So I just affirm the reality that you do have to find a way that you can trust that what you're writing is safe and nobody else can see. Because you got to feel safe so you can be honest so that you can actually do meaningful work in your journal.
Yes.
So, and it's different for everybody. I meet some people who are like, I hope my kids read my journals one day. And they're not as concerned about it. And other people, like I had a lady who's a paralegal and she's like, Allison, she's like, my whole profession is you don't write things down because that's what gets you in trouble legally, right?
Yeah.
And so you just have to be creative sometimes and think through, how can I do this so that I do ensure that it doesn't get into the wrong hands. And there are options. And is any option foolproof? No.
No, of course. But
of course not.
I mean,
but there are steps you can take to make it a lot harder. And like for my kids, they know. They're like, those are mom's journals. We don't touch those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do they sneak down in the morning and open my journals up? Probably not, because they're going to go play Minecraft instead. That's way more interesting.
They don't really
them.
Care.
No.
Yeah, it's not that interesting.
Yeah.
Practically, what changes have you seen in yourself since journaling became a steady, consistent rhythm for you?
So for me, my reactivity has really slowed down. So when something happens to me and I have this immediate gut level response where I'm angry or just want to ream somebody out because of what they've done, I have
Yeah.
noticed that I am able now to stop and recognize maybe that's not the best course of action. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
should go journal about it. And I really do attribute that to journaling because it is what I would call a slow practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that has been one of the biggest benefits. And I also feel like I don't always carry around the weight of the world like I used to because I have a
Yeah.
place to put that weight. I have a physical place
Mm.
that it gets written down.
That's really good. That's really, really good. I think that, I am someone, I'm not a journaler. So like when I first saw your book, like come across my desk, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm the target audience for this. Like I don't
Yeah.
really like to journal. You know what I mean? But your book was really perfect for me actually because
Mhm.
it struck me a lot because I'm always like, I'm a verbal processor. It's fine. Like I process my feelings, but I just process them verbally. Like
Yeah.
I don't need to write them down. But like you're doing a very good job of selling me on it. And your book did a very good job because you're right. Like verbal processing is great,
Yep.
and praying out loud or whatever. It's all good, but I just keep feeling struck by like it's so easy to get distracted. It's so easy to then start making a grocery list. It's so easy to all the things like
Yeah.
and the act of writing or typing something, you're right, it feels like you put it somewhere.
Yes. It's an embodied practice.
Yeah. And honestly, I forgot about this until this very moment. I was meeting with a therapist years ago and I was struggling through forgiveness with someone for something. And she said, so this week, I want you to write a letter to that person that you're never going to send them.
Love it.
And I want you to put it all in there. And I remember, this is so stupid that I like forgot about this. Like, I remember feeling like kind of an out of body experience, like where I sort of felt like when I was done, like I was like, oh, I forgive them. Like I genuinely like started the letter feeling like this is like stupid. Why am I doing this? Like this is like
Yeah.
this is like years and years of crap. You know what I mean? And then it was like by the time it was done, I was like, okay. Like it felt like I put it somewhere and
Yes.
it was off of me.
Yes. 100%. And it's funny, you say you're a verbal processor. I am too. So I
Yeah.
connect and resonate with that. My marriage is better because I journal, because my husband now
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the sounding board for everything.
Every single one of your feelings. Yeah.
And he is, I love that man and he's amazing and he will listen. And
Of course.
so, but he will tell you I'm a better me when I'm writing and journaling.
Yeah.
And his sanity is a little better.
No, it is good. That the first time I ever thought, because like I think of course it's so healthy to tell your spouse everything and process
Yeah.
da, 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 da. But like the first time that ever occurred to me that like maybe I need to find other ways to like process my feelings is like when my husband he had a job for a while where he was traveling. He was working for Samaritan's Purse. He would travel a lot.
Okay.
And every night, like it would like be like I would store up all my frustrations all day about my children, and then he would call me at night, and I would just like go off for 30 minutes straight without coming up for air about everything frustrating that happened, and then like he would just be like, "So sorry, like I'm so sorry," and then I'll be like, "No, the whole day wasn't really that bad. It was just like
Right.
1 hour that was really bad." You know what I mean? And like,
Oh, yeah.
and I was like burdening him so much, like, and he's like away and feeling so guilty, like you know what I mean? And
Right.
so
Oh,
it is
yeah.
healthy to have other ways to
Yes.
process.
Yes, absolutely. And as you were talking about, like, you'd kind of spill out about all of the hard things, but realize that wasn't the whole of your day. I think that's the other thing too with
Yeah.
journaling is so many of us think this is the place where I go to like dump all the hard stuff. And it is, but it's also a place to put your joy as well.
Yeah.
Your journal will, I think people find it more meaningful when there's a bit of a balance between both of them. Because if your journal is always the place where you go only for the hard stuff, you're going to start to dread it
Yeah.
because it's hard, right?
Yeah, totally.
So you can also go to it with joy and good things. That's one of the reasons I keep that kind of daily journal of, hey, here's what happened with our family, because it's the small joys, it's the small graces that remind me, even though there's hard stuff going on, because all of us have that, there's also these really good, joyful, grace-filled things too.
That's so good. Now, something I also was really struck by in your book is that you pointed out journaling does not have to always be a solo activity.
Right.
Tell me about some of that.
Yeah. So I think inherently we think of it as a private thing, as it should be, right? We've
Right.
talked about that. But any of us are more apt to actually do something when we do it in community. I mean, there's
Okay.
all kinds of research on habits that talk about that. You pair up with other people who value the same things, you're going to show up. You're going to do it
Mhm.
more often. And so that's part of it. The other piece of it is when you sit around a table and you hear somebody else who's also journaled the same prompt, they may not tell you what they wrote down, but when they tell you what it was like for them to journal that way, or
Uh-huh.
how they heard that prompt, or maybe an insight they came up with, it's amazing how it just inspires you or me
Mhm.
as well to hear somebody else, to be witnessed to, and for your own story to be witnessed by other people in some capacity is profoundly meaningful, and is
Mhm.
another piece of the healing journey, honestly,
Yeah.
because that's what makes us not feel alone. And
Mhm.
so part of my work is opening up spaces where people can gather. Some of that's virtually, some of that's in person,
Mhm.
and we all journal and we all talk about it. Maybe
Mhm.
not what's specifically written in our journal, but we talk about that process and that experience, and we kind of spur each other on in it.
Mhm.
And I feel like every time I just leave a little more changed, with a little different perspective, and a little bit more encouragement, to keep going, to keep putting pen to page, and to keep finding other people that want to do it, because it's just such a blessing.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so good. Now, I want to talk about journaling through metaphors is something you talk about. So it's like we've
Yeah.
talked about your story, we've talked about journaling in general, and then something that was unique about your book is that you weren't just talking about journaling in general. You were talking about journaling through scripture and specifically through metaphors.
Yeah.
You said in your book, you said, how do we experience a presence that seems intangible? I've never heard God audibly speak. I've never interlaced my fingers through his gentle hands. I've never seen him walk through my front door and sit down for dinner. But scripture threads the reality of God's presence through its ancient pages, and often his presence arrives in metaphor. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So metaphors, very simply, are a I think it was Aristotle who said it's giving the name of one thing to something else.
Mm-hmm.
Something maybe we don't understand. Our brains, they like to make sense out of things, and one of the ways we make sense is metaphor, because metaphor is based in images.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've ever talked about God as the good shepherd, if you've ever read a passage about Jesus as living water, that's a metaphor. That's just at its very basic. It's a metaphor. And the reason they work, the reason they're meaningful for us and we connect to them is because um, maybe we've had experience with sheep,
Mm-hmm.
or we understand that idea of a shepherd, or we're around water and we're like, oh, so if he's living water, we can start to take the attributes of that image, the characteristics of that image, and learn something about the person or the thing that we're trying to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And you just see those images used to talk about God and his presence all throughout scripture. And so every chapter in my book kind of hones in on a different metaphor from scripture. And I know a lot of people get weirded out by that because they think
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an English person. Ugh,
Yeah.
not
Mm-hmm.
my thing. And this is not a literature book, and that's not my purpose. It's just
Mm-hmm.
to say, hey, listen, you're already familiar with metaphor. We all use them
Yes.
subconsciously
Mm-hmm.
anyways. And I'm just wanting you to see them and to pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to them and to ask some questions. What does this tell me about God's presence? How does this help me reconsider how he might be showing up in my life? Because you've got one example from the book is he shows up as a gentle whisper to Elijah. And I resonate so much with Elijah and his story.
Mm-hmm.
And you expect God maybe to show up as the angry, stern, lecturing parent or the destructive force, but he's not in any of that. It's in that gentle whisper. And what do we know about a gentle whisper? How do we experience that? What does that evoke for us?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what leads us into the presence of God.
Yeah, absolutely. So for you, what is different about journaling about metaphors as opposed to just reading the scriptures? Again, like hearkening back to what we've already said, like, well, what's different about journaling than just praying? Again, like what's different about journaling than just like reading your Bible?
Yeah. So reading is always going to be a good thing, right? We got to
Mm-hmm.
start there.
Yep.
But again, I think it's a lot easier to zone out when we're just reading.
Yeah.
A lot easier to get distracted by that to-do list when we're
Mm-hmm.
just reading and thinking about things, versus the writing, which is that invitation to slow down, to put it on paper, to look at it, to consider it, that act of writing is just going to take you a little bit deeper than if you're just simply thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk about the Psalms specifically a little bit? You said, what I found is that the poetry of the Psalms can midwife us through our pain and into the goodness and presence of God when we let their rhythm and silence, light and darkness, and their juxtaposed metaphors and words work through our writing. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the Psalms.
I love the Psalms. And this is so fun because we just actually talked about this in the journaling class I'm teaching at my church right this past week. This was our topic. And I love the Psalms because it is almost always the both and of life. It's the hard and the good. It's the joy and the sorrow. It's all of the both and that so many of us walk hand in hand with every single day. And the honesty that we see in the Psalms is an invitation, I think, for the rest of us to be honest in our own conversations and connections to God. Yeah. And so if you could start anywhere, I talked about finding lines or quotes that resonate with you. The Psalms are just chock full of lines that you can pull and write down in your journal and talk about, man, why does this resonate? How does this resonate? This is like my life or not like my life. And there's just there's a different kind of beauty in poetry, which is what the Psalms are. I think that really speaks to our heart in a similar way that maybe music does. We know that affects the brain differently than just straight written prose. I think there's something similar going on with the Psalms as poetry too.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. If someone is listening to this and they're like, okay, I want to try it, how can they start?
Yeah. I mean, they could buy the book because there are journaling prompts, 3 of them at the end of every chapter.
Yes.
And, or just go to Google and find some journaling prompts. Go to scripture and look at the places where you see God showing up for his people, which is basically almost all of scripture. You're not going to be hard pressed to find it. And just start to explore, what does God's presence look like? Have I ever experienced that? How does that help bring some healing to my own story to know that this is true about God, that he is a gentle whisperer, he is living water. But I think for a lot of us, the idea of a blank page can be really overwhelming. Where do I even start? And so that's why I say, find some prompts, find some gentle ways onto the page, because it acts as a little bit of structure that helps us think in a certain direction. That can be really helpful if that blank page is just a big question mark.
And truly, guys, like the book, the way it is structured, and first of all, even just physically the book, it's larger, it's wider than your average book, so it's easier to write in. Like if you're thinking like
print's a little bigger, so it's easier to read.
Exactly. The print's a little bigger, the lines aren't spread apart enough. Like, sometimes like, there's just like some books that like, no, right. And you're like, are you kidding me? Like, practically speaking, I cannot write in this.
Right.
It's like more notebooky. So just so you know, practically speaking, by the book, there are chapters. Obviously, each chapter is like information, and then there's prompts that specifically go with that, spaces for you to write. That is a very, very good way to start. Before I let you go, I did want to ask, like, how is your son today? What does his life look like today? I know he's 16, right?
He'll be 16 in September, yes.
Okay,
so he's on the countdown already for that birthday.
I'm sure, yeah.
So he started high school this past year, so that was a big transition. I think overall he is doing well. But as with any season of life, there are challenges too for him and for us, but we are, by God's grace, navigating those, learning to lean into God's wisdom and presence as we kind of step through, let's be honest, puberty. That's a reality, and just him figuring out, trying to find friends and his people and that sort of thing. I think it's challenging for any kiddo. And then you have some neurodivergence in there, and that becomes, that adds another layer of complexity.
Of course.
But he loves school. He loves friends. He loves our dogs. And he's a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun to be around. So he's doing well. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. And I know he has a beautiful head of curly red hair.
He sure does. I tell people I married my husband so I could have redheaded babies, and the Lord delivered.
I love it. I love that. I love that
Yep.
so much. Tell everybody about some resources that you offer in addition to the book. I know
Yeah.
you have Saturday pages. Tell us a little bit about these communities.
Yeah, so I'll say you can go to AllisonByxbe.com and kind of find more information on all of these. But Saturday Pages is my twice a month Zoom call where I bring a prompt and I guide you to that to write in your journal. And there's
Mm-hmm.
usually about 15 or so of us that meet together. We all journal to the same prompt, have a little conversation at the end. That is all you got to do is sign up for my newsletter so you can get the link to join the meeting,
Perfect.
and to know when the dates are coming up because it's always 2 Saturdays a month, but those
If there's
fluctuate a little
five,
bit,
yeah, yeah.
right? And so I created that space for people who have told me I want to journal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding a hard time making the time to do it. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, great. I'll just open up a space where
Yeah.
that's what we're all doing. And you can show up and you can journal. And so that's a lot of fun. I love that. And then I also host an online community, a membership community called the Inky Collective. And this is a space I designed for people who are like, okay, I really want to be a bit more intentional about my
Mm-hmm.
journaling. And I want to be surrounded consistently by other people who are also really developing this rhythm. And so I
Mm-hmm.
have weekly journaling prompts. We have what I call coffee chats, where I invite guests in and I interview them about their journaling. And we do some community based stuff, just sharing about our lives and questions and our own journaling habits and things like that. So it's an interactive community, but it's very little of it is time based. So you can be literally anywhere in the world and be a part of it because I make posts and then you can
Mm-hmm.
access them as your schedule allows. And
Mm-hmm.
then we have a lot of interaction in the comments on those
Oh,
posts.
nice.
Yeah, so those are the two primary spaces. And then I do also host in-person retreats. So I
Oh,
have
nice.
one coming up in North Carolina in the fall, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
co-hosting it with a friend of mine who's a spiritual director. So we're
Oh, I
super
love that. I
excited.
started meeting with a
Yes.
spiritual director like a
Okay.
year and a half ago or whatever. I
That's
love her.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do in-person stuff as well. And retreats are probably one of my favorite things that I get to do. So I would love it if anybody's interested for sure
Yeah.
to check that out.
Oh, that's nice. All right. So we'll link all your stuff in the show notes, your website, the book, all the
Yeah.
things so people can find all the things that you offer. I thank you so much, Allison. This has been so, so, so nice. I just appreciate you being so willing to share your story and your journey. And I think this is just going to be so helpful to so many people.
I loved having our conversation. It was real, it was honest, and those are my favorite kinds. So thank you so much for the invitation.